A sleek, candy-apple red Ferrari sat stranded at the edge of a pristine boulevard, lined with glassy boutiques and swaying palm trees. Sunlight danced across its polished curves, making the stalled car look even more out of place as smoke billowed from beneath the hood. Horns honked as cars slowed to gawk before speeding off, the drivers casting amused or annoyed glances at the spectacle. Beside the smoking Ferrari stood a tall, immaculately dressed woman in her late 30s. Her flowing designer dress shimmered in the sun, and she balanced precariously on high heels that clicked furiously on the pavement as she paced. Her manicured fingers clutched an expensive smartphone that she pressed hard against her ear. Hello, roadside? Are you kidding me? 2 hours, she screeched, her voice echoing. This is a Ferrari, not a trash can on wheels. I'm paying for premium service. She threw her free hand in the air, rolling her eyes dramatically at the passing crowd as if expecting them to commiserate with her plight. Instead, most people avoided her gaze, hurrying along, or giving her and the smoking car a wide berth. A little girl tugged on her mother's arm to stare at the car until the mother dragged her away. She jabbed at her phone screen furiously, red nails flashing. Sweat beaded at her hairline despite her attempts to dab it away with a delicate monogrammed handkerchief. The heat from the engine wasn't helping. Smoke now drifted lazily into the air in thick gray tendrils. Of all Deswith. This is ridiculous, she barked, stomping her heel. That was when she noticed a figure watching her. A teenage boy stood a few feet away, holding an old battered metal toolbox. He wore faded jeans with grease stains and a dark t-shirt that was smudged and torn at the shoulder. His hair was a messy mop that fell in front of sharp, observant eyes. He had the unmistakable look of someone who spent most of his time in garages. Rather than shopping districts, for a moment, they locked eyes. He didn't smirk or look intimidated. He just regarded her calmly, taking in the hissing Ferrari. Then he slowly stepped closer, adjusting the grip on his toolbox. Need some help, ma'am? He asked, voice even and respectful, but firm, enough to be heard over the traffic. The woman's eyebrows shot up. She scanned him up and down with open disdain, eyes lingering on his oil-streaked hands and torn shirt. She barked a harsh laugh that startled a few pedestrians nearby. Help from you! She practically shouted. She gestured at the Ferrari like it was an exotic animal he couldn't possibly understand. Do you even know what this is? Or did you wander in from under a bridge? He didn't flinch. He looked at the smoking hood again and then back at her. His grip on the toolbox tightened just slightly, but his expression remained neutral. It's a Ferrari 488, he replied quietly, and it's overheating because you've got coolant leaking from a cracked hose. Her mouth fell open in disbelief. She sputtered for a second, then let out a derisive snort. Oh, fantastic! A little street urchin mechanic thinks he knows better than the dealership. Why don't you go fix a bicycle or something, huh? Don't touch my car! He waited calmly for her to finish, watching the smoke thicken. Then he shifted the toolbox onto his other hand and said, even more quietly, suit yourself. But you're going to ruin the engine if you keep it like that? Their standoff played out as the city bustled around them. The rich woman seething in righteous indignation while the teen mechanic watched. Her car die slowly in the heat. The woman's face twisted with outrage, her perfectly lined lips curling into a snarl. She planted one hand on her hip and jabbed her finger toward him, her voice rising above the street noise. Listen, kid, I don't have time for your little act. This car is worth more than your entire life. Don't even think about laying a finger on it. The boy didn't react to the insult. He set his toolbox down gently on the pavement and looked her straight in the eye. I'm just offering to help, he said evenly. If you don't want it, that's fine. She scoffed, so loudly a passerby turned to stare before quickly moving on. Please, do you even know what you're talking about? You're just some filthy little grease monkey playing mechanic. This isn't a toy car you can practice on. He watched her rant without blinking, arms loosely at his sides. When she paused to catch her breath, he said calmly, your coolant hose is cracked. That's why it's smoking. It's an easy fix if you don't want the engine ruined. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh, clapping once in mock applause. Wow, look at you, Mr. Expert. Maybe you should get a real job instead of pretending to know cars on the street corner. The boy's eyes flickered briefly with something hurt. Maybe, or irritation, but it vanished almost immediately. He simply nodded once. Asterisk, okay, he said softly. I won't touch it. Asterisk, but he didn't move away. He stayed by his toolbox, watching the steady plume of smoke. The woman glared at him, cheeks flushed, breathing hard. Asterisk, get lost, she spat. Go beg for change somewhere else. Or better yet, go wash up. You're disgusting. Asterisk, he didn't argue. He just stayed quiet, eyes on the car. His silence seemed to provoke her even more. She let out another angry noise, turned away, and resumed screaming into her phone, cursing at the roadside service for making her wait. Asterisk around them. The city carried on, but the tension between them was palpable. Her fury, like a wall, his quiet defiance like an unshakable stone. Asterisk, the boy watched the smoke curling from the Ferrari's hood, his eyes narrowing slightly. Without a word, he crouched beside his toolbox and popped it open. The old metal hinges squeaked. He sifted through worn but well-kept tools. Selecting a small wrench and a rag. Asterisk, the woman spun around mid-sentence on her call when she heard the click of metal on metal. Asterisk, hey, I told you not to touch it, she shrieked. Asterisk, he didn't answer. He calmly placed the rag over the hot latch, released the hood, and propped it open. A wave of heat and smoke puffed into the air. Bystanders slowed down, a few stopping outright to watch the scene unfold. Asterisk, are you deaf? She barked, stepping forward, heels clicking like gunshots. Get away from my car before I have you arrested. Asterisk, he ignored her, leaning in to inspect. The engine? His fingers moved with practiced precision, nudging aside hoses, checking clamps. He wiped grime from a label and traced a finger along a cracked rubber line. Asterisk, people began whispering nearby. A pair of teenagers with shopping bags pointed at the car and the yelling woman, then at the boy working silently. An older man in a suit watched with mild interest. Asterisk, the woman, noticing the attention, lowered her voice but sounded even more vicious. Asterisk, you're embarrassing yourself. And me, do you know how much this car costs? Do you have any idea? Asterisk. The boy didn't flinch. He tightened one connection and began wrapping tape around the cracked hose to seal it temporarily. His breathing was steady. Asterisk, I know exactly what it is, he said softly without looking up. Asterisk, her mouth worked, speechless for a moment. She folded her arms, scowling, tapping her foot. But the insults caught in her throat as she saw how sure he was. Asterisk, the boy finished, wrapping the line, checked. The radiator cap then stood slowly. He wiped his hands on the rag and gently shut the hood with a practiced thump. Asterisk, he turned to face her fully, finally meeting her furious, bewildered eyes with a calm, unbothered gaze. Asterisk, you can keep yelling if you want, he said quietly, but it's fixed enough to get you to a shop without blowing the engine. Asterisk, for the first time, she didn't have anything to say. The crowd around them had grown silent, waiting to see what would happen next. Asterisk, the boy took a careful step back from the Ferrari, his expression unreadable. He wiped his hands once more on the dirty rag, then set it neatly in his toolbox. Without fanfare, he snapped the box shut. The small metallic click seemed to echo in the sudden hush that fell over the onlookers. Asterisk, he glanced at the woman, who was staring at him as though she couldn't process what had just happened. Her mouth was slightly open, her perfectly painted lips trembling with outrage and confusion. Asterisk, try it now, he said simply. His voice was low, calm, but carried enough weight that a couple of people in the small crowd flinched. Asterisk, she blinked rapidly, looking around as if to see if anyone would save her from this humiliation. But no one moved. A couple with shopping bags held their breath, watching intently. A delivery driver who'd stopped his bike at the curb leaned forward, eyes wide. Asterisk, slowly. She stalked to the driver's side door, her heels clicking sharply. She didn't bother looking at the boy again. She threw the door open and slid into the plush leather seat, glaring at the wheel as if it, too, had betrayed her. She twisted the key in the ignition for a heartbeat. Nothing. Asterisk, then the engine fired, up with a deep, smooth growl. No smoke, no stuttering, just the unmistakable, powerful purr of a perfectly tuned Ferrari. Asterisk, the woman stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat as the engine idled perfectly behind her. For once, there were no insults ready on her tongue. She glanced at the crowd, realizing every eye was on her now, waiting to see what she'd do. The humiliation burned hot on her cheeks. Asterisk, she smoothed her hair with a trembling hand, and swallowed hard. Asterisk, how did you even know how to fix that? She finally asked, voice cracking despite her best attempt to sound composed. Asterisk, the boy didn't gloat, he didn't smirk. He just picked up his battered toolbox and closed the latch gently, the metallic sound punctuating the heavy silence. Asterisk, I've seen it before, he said simply. Happens a lot with these models. They overheat. If you don't check the hoses,